welcome to the beginners class for beading. Today we are talking about beading tools, their names and their uses. So the first tool I'm going to talk about is the round nose plier. It's called a round nose plier because of the shape of the nozzle, because it has a rounded nozzle. So it's called a round nose plier. It's used in making loops in jewelry making or in beading. So that's the round nose plier. Then there is a cutter. The cutter is used in cutting metals or cutting rods or cutting your loop pins and your end pins. So just as the name implies, is used for cutting. And I'll demonstrate in a minute how to cut and tell you how why it's shaped this way. The next plier I'm going to talk about is the flat nose plier. It's called a flat nose plier because a part of the nozzle, the nozzle of the plier is flat on one end and then it's a bit rounded on the other end. You can see in here that the flat nose plier has about nearly an inch of it is beveled or is grooved, and then about a quarter of an inch of it is smooth. And I'll tell you that the reason why it's like this and what it can be used for. You can also see that inside of this flat nose plier has a cutter. You can see it has a cutter in here, and it can be used in cutting wires as well. In a minute I'm going to show you how to use all of those. There is another plier here in my hand, also known as a flat nose plier. This flat nose plier has in the inside all flattened and all smooth, and it's used in straightening up the end pins or the loop pins when they come. So this is an end pin, and it's mostly used in earring making or in connecting, depending on how you use it. Sometimes due to packaging, these end pins come bent, and that is where the flat nose plier comes in handy. So the flat nose plier can be used to straighten up your pins before you start working with them. So that is it. That is one use of the flat nose plier, to straighten all your end pins and your loop pins before you start working with them. It can be used together with another flat nose plier to help you twist or pick up things, or help you open up your jam rings and close it back up. So that is the use of the flat nose plier. This flat nose plier can also be used in crimping, and I'll be doing all of that in a minute so that you see what it is used for. Now let's jump in straight to the uses of the round nose plier. So this is the round nose plier, and like I said from the beginning, it's used in making loops. So I want to make a loop here with this end pin so you see the characteristics of the round nose plier. The tip of the round nose plier will give you the size of the loop you want to make. So if you want to make a loop this size, then you're going to be placing your pin just at the tip. If you want your loop size to be quite bigger, about this size, then I'm going to have to push my pin into the middle so that when I make my loop, it's going to have the shape of this nose. And this is how to make a loop. There are two ways of making it, and I'm going to show you both. You place your pin in between your nose of the plier, flattened, and make sure that you know exactly what size you want to make your loop so that you can place your pin there. Turn your hand, the one holding the plier, towards you gently like that, to how far your wrist will allow you to go. Leave it, come back and pick it up again. Keep turning it until the end of the pin meets the neck of the pin here to make a loop. So that's the loop we've made. Like, it looks like a 9, or if you turn it this way, it looks like a P, depending on which way you want to turn it. And then you can dress it up by making your pin stand up a bit, because we want our pin to be standing and not looking downwards. And that is how to make a perfect loop with your pin. So you can do a pin like this, or let me show you another way to do a pin. So this size, the size of this loop is as a result of where we placed our pin, and that gave us that size. Now I want to make a loop much bigger than this size, so I'm going to come in to make my loop here so that it's much bigger than this one, just so that you know how to make loops of different sizes. Now my pin is a bit bent, so I want to straighten it, and I'm going to use my flat nose plier to do that, to straighten it up before I use it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bend. That's the second way of making loops. I'm going to bend my pin 90 degrees away from me, and then I'll bring it back towards me again in a loop. And this is what I'm going to determine where to bend. So I'm going to bend it over here like that. So 90 degrees. If you look at it, I've made it about a 90 degrees bend away from me. So this is away from me, and I'm going to bring it towards me in a loop. And then I'll come to the tip here because I want to make my loop here. Come here, leave it, pick it up again, and finish it off in a loop. And that's another way of making a loop. So you can see that both loops were made a bit differently, but we achieve the same results. Now we have our loops. Let's say we don't want the loop we just made, so we want to cut it and then do something else with the pin, and this is where you use your cutter. So if you cut on this side, now it depends on how you use your cutter. Each side gives you a different quality to your cutting edge. Now if I cut on this end, the end that I cut will be sharper than when I cut on this edge. So look, and when you place your whatever you want to cut into your cutter, you have to cover this end so that the end that you're cutting don't fly off into your eye or into someone else's eye when they're standing by. So for safety reasons, when you're cutting, you have to cup this end, so you cut into the groove and you don't allow what you've cut to fly off for safety reasons. So I'm going to cup it and then cut it like that, so I still have it in there and not flying off and then causing havoc. Now I want to talk about this flat nose plier that doubles up as for crimping. So this end can be used for crimping. This little end here, as in this short bit here, which is about a quarter of an inch, this smooth bit here can be used for straightening up curved metals or curved pins, and then inside here can be used for cutting. So this plier alone does 3 things in one. So when you're starting your jewelry making hobby or a project and you're not sure if you want to carry on with this for a long while and don't want to spend too much, you don't have to get all the pliers. You can just get your round nose plier and your flat nose plier. Just these two will be able to take you a long way in your project. So you don't need to get all the pliers, which may be too costly, but just get these two and you can still get away with it. So let's see how to cut with a flat nose plier. And this is what you do. So this serves as the smooth part of your cutter, and this serves as the grooved part of the cutter. So I'm going to be cutting on the smooth side. I'll put whatever I'm cutting into the cutting area, and this is the cutting area, if you can see it properly. Cap it like usual so that the what I'm cutting doesn't fly off, and then cut it off. So you see that I don't need to get a separate cutter for my project. I can use this flat nose plier, and then we'll be able to achieve everything else I want to achieve with it. So I've talked about the cutters, I've talked about the pliers. I'm going to move on to talk about measuring tools. So in beading, we do measure as well. You can use a ruler or a tape measure depending on your preference. Sometimes when you're doing a very long project like waist beads, which are quite longer, running into inches, about more than 12 inches or 15 inches, which is, you know, quite long, then you can be using the tape measure instead of a ruler. But if you're doing very short projects, then you can just get away with a ruler. but you can double them up as you go along. So I've spoken about the measuring tools as well. Now this is a snipper or a sharpie used for cutting threads as you work along. I'll be using this a lot in our project here, and it's comes in very handy when you need to just cut a very short thread and in whilst you are weaving, and then you move along. So this is also for cutting your threads. And then the lighter, which I use in bending my cord ends in weaving or in beading, and you'll be seeing me use it a lot in our projects. Now let's move on to talk about our beading threads. So there are lots of beading threads or threads used for beading. I like to use the nylon, transparent nylon thread a lot, or the fisherman's cord a lot. And usually I would use the knot 25 or the knot 05, depending on the size of the bead I'm using. But I usually like to work with the knot 25. You can see it here, 0.25. This is the size I usually work with a lot, and I love it. You can also use the Nymo threads, which are all nylon threads. And this is a Nymo thread in white and in black, and it is the size D. You can see it up here, size D. So depending on what project you are doing, you can choose your thread accordingly. But when you choose a colorful thread, it should match with the project you are doing. I usually get away with my transparent thread because it doesn't matter what the color of the bead is, it's able to hide itself in it, and it gives me a neater project. So I love the nylon, fisherman's cord, the nylon one a lot. There is also the elastic thread, and this is usually used in making bracelets for toddlers and children, or for the elderly. The reason why it's advisable to use this thread in beading for children, toddlers, or the elderly is it's easy to put on and take off. Because when you use the elastic thread, you don't have to use a fastener. And I'll be coming to uses of the fastener soon. So it's easier for you to put the bracelet on and take it off if you're using an elastic thread. Then there is this other beading thread that is plastic on the outside but has a little bit of metal running through it, and we would see the uses of this as well. It makes beautiful projects. It can be used in beading bracelets or necklaces, or even making earrings and dangling earrings, and we'll see the uses of all of that in a minute. There are loads of threads in beading, threads and cords in beading. So this is a cord in beading, and this is a cord in beading that can be used for necklaces as well. So there's a cotton cord. There's the rat tail. So this is the rat tail. That's also used in making necklaces. You just make a single string or double string or multi-string, or how many strings you want, with your beads on it, and then you just finish it off at the end. We'll look at how to use all these threads as we go along. So I've spoken about our beading tools. Those are the pliers, and I've just spoken about beading threads, or the threads for beading. Now I want to talk about the needles for beading. So for me, I like to use the big eye needle a lot, and the big eye needle comes in a lot of in different lengths depending on the project you are doing. There is the smallest, the shortest length, and the longest length. For me, if I am beading any project, if I am doing a weave, I prefer to use the shortest length. But if I'm going to be doing multi-stringing with a lot of beads, like seed beads, I'd rather go for the longest length, because I'll be able to string a lot of small beads on it that way. So that is it for the tools in beading in this class, and then we'll come back again to talk about the findings or the hardware in jewelry making in our next class. Hope you enjoyed the class. See you soon in our next class. Bye.